Okay, today let's start by talking about some of the emitter properties. There's two properties I want to focus on right away, and that is the box, really the bond stiffness property, and then I'll go to the max speed property. So I made 4 identical boxes with different bond stiffness. So this one's 1, this one's 0.1, then you have 0.01 and 0. And then we have the same here at these 4. Now if you notice, I have fields for these first 4 to go away from the emitter, and these 4 to go towards the emitter. So if you're trying to stretch a pair of bonds, and I'll press play, you'll notice that the strength of the bond kind of defines how far the particles will separate and how much the bonds will stretch. So if you're not careful, if you put like a 0 bond, it'll stretch. But if I actually just locked it out here, it will keep on going. If I try to let it go, so it just goes to infinity. If I were to wipe out this these fields. Now, if I were to watch these bonds when they're under compression, again, the one strength, bond stiffness, they don't compress, they just want to keep their shape. But as you go to smaller and smaller bond stiffness, they just compress completely, having no strength. Now, if you look at your emitter, it does have a bond stiffness between 0 and 1, but what happens if you decide to go to a negative value or a super high positive value? So if I were to go to -1, for example, apply, and I reset the particles, nothing seems to happen. So that's pretty good. But if I were to make a lot of them and increase the speed, for example, and that's, I don't know, 200. See these white lines? That's all bunch of bonds as the emitter becomes unstable. So you don't want to go into the negative. You might be able to go to maybe -0.1, and that might be something you can do. Gives you some very interesting properties if you were looking to that. Or if you were to go to very high values, for example, a bond stiffness of 10, again, it breaks the kind of breaks the game, so we usually don't do that. There we go. Let's delete this guy and clear the bonds. Now over here, we have speeds. So if you have a speed of 0, max speed, your particles won't move, obviously. And then you can increase the speeds and changes how fast they go. We'll grab this top one, which is the 50 right, for first. Or actually, we'll grab the 5 for first. So 5 speed is pretty quick. If I were to take a giant box of a ship, this guy, and I press it to my 5 speed, notice that it's just hitting into it and slowly eroding my ship, as you expect it to do. What happens if I put in front of the 50 speed? Well, because you're going so fast, the particles actually end up jumping. See right over here, it's just jumping ahead, which can be very deadly if you were to put a corporate ship like this. It doesn't even have time to survive. So I'll show that again. And I'll drag it up ahead. And just watch as I press N for a single frame. We'll go from there. We jump 3 arrows, or 3.5. So it's jumping many parts, and it just dies right away. So you don't want to do that unless you want to make your players very angry. So right now I'm just going to destroy these 2 doppels. Now I want to talk about doppel armor. So there's this here that says has armor, and I put one with armor, one without. And if you let them go, they'll build, and you'll notice that the one with armor, the bottom one, has a thick red shielding, which is much, much tougher. Now, how does that compare when you're hitting into a ship? Let's try that again. That's not a very good example. There we go. By the way, I'm holding B when I'm pressing a ship in the editor to make the ship right away. Notice how far the damage goes when it's a armored doppel versus a standard doppel. So it's much more powerful and can sustain a lot more damage. Let's clear that. Now, mer spawners and standard spawners is another thing very important on those. Whatever, something else is in there. So there's the 5 or 6 parts which are right here. So if you have the grow rate, if you change that, so let's delete this guy, and there you go, switch, there you go, and we can delete this guy, clear your particles. There you go. So we have, let's look at grow rate now. So if we just let him watch, I can actually, let's remove that, and let's go from grow rate 0.1, and this one is going to be a grow rate of 1. If you do that, what happens? The grow rate, well, it's much faster. Now if you were to put a ship to fight back, so let's take a ship, any ship, this, something small, there you go, and it fights it. See the grow rate of 1, even though you're doing it's a relatively powerful ship, it's not doing a lot of damage. You're not seeing anything actually occur to this vessel. Now if I were to do this on this one, which has a growth rate of 0.1, so you can see the damage being dealt and the particles slowly breaking down. It's still pretty tough, but it's doing it slowly, eroding it. And if you have multiple ship, you could do that and destroy this doppel. So let's see, B. So if you look now at this doppel, it's dying much, much faster. Now if I were to do that with this top one, we can watch it, even that with 2 vessels, we're not even putting a dent into the doppel, it's just regenerating fast enough. So that's a really important one. Thrust and max velocity is obviously how fast it speeds up, and the maximum speed, rotation. Then there's a weapon count. So you can have up to 4 weapons, 0 to 4. So if you want a vessel that just kind of slams into your enemies, you have it at 0. But if you want to give it weapons, like this one, I'll give it a weapon. I will move it like that, and let's clear that. So it has 4 weapons. If you watch it, it will, oops, sorry about that. So it looks like there's only 3, but it's actually 4 of them at once. So let's move it sideways. We're not seeing the other one, eh? There you go. If you put it right there, you can see the 4 weapons. The one here, one there, one here, and one at the back. So 4 streams of weapons. If you want to make it very deadly, you turn that your fire time. So your fire time is number of frames between each particle fired. And if I do that, there you go. So it's firing much faster now. Oh. There we go. I didn't destroy the original doppel. So now that's firing 1 particle per frame. Much more destructive. There you go. And now you can see how the doppel streams travel. So it's not actually going straight from the CM. But if I were to move it into the stray, it would just store like that. So we don't need this anymore. Oh, actually, I forgot one thing. Let's show you how to change ship design. So there is a series of settings. So you have your type. So you have all the standard vessel shapes that come from the original fleet. Then you have custom, random, and mirror. Now, to be honest, I never use mirror and random. Random is just whatever's available from the standard fleet, and during the game will change a different kind of a doppel as you destroy them. And mirror, I believe, is what it takes what's available in your fleet and builds those. So if I destroy this and give that a 0 time, come on, reset time. So I don't really use mirror, so it doesn't make a difference here. Anyways, but the custom one is the interesting one. If you go to custom, you can design your own doppel. You can either grab one from your ship browser. So if I were to make, for example, the Death Eater, so it's a big vessel, and I choose this one, and you have to press apply every time, and I delete that. Would now build the Death Eater. Now this is a slow building because it's so big. As you can see, it's slowly building out the shape of the Death Eater. And this would be a very difficult doppel to fight against. So let's quickly go back to these guys. So the standard emitters, the other interesting device is the recall range, which is basically when you have a ship near them, any of its particles that's farther away will start to come back. And I have a range here of 25 and a range of 100 on this one. So 100 is actually quite far away. So the slow red circle here means that recall has been turned on. So if I actually push my guy away, it needs to be quite far away before the recall turns off. So, like that. So it's still trying to recall particles. There you go. So the circle stops. So it's right around here. So if I were to remove the field, come on. They'll all try to come back to the emitter and protect it. Right, so if I remove that, now they're just free flowing, going wherever they want. Now I put this guy back down here, and now they all come back, hitting the ship in the process. So too big of a recall range is not particularly good. To remove this one. So 25 is the default, and it's pretty close. So the circles, as you can see, now it starts, so it's this distance for a recall of 25. Similar to the doppel spawner, we have the ship spawners, and they work the same way here. We have, instead of a build rate, well, actually we do have a build rate below, we have the intrinsic energy. And intrinsic energy is basically the amount of energy itself produces every round. So that way it doesn't need to have an energy source supplying it at all times. Then you also have your heal rate, which is slightly different than your build rate. And then you can change how fast it fires weapons. So if you were to take this giant box and move it close, this is a ×1 firing. If I were to set it up to 100, for example, I have to delete this guy and rebuild it. So let's quickly rebuild that. it'll start firing its cannon and missiles extremely quickly. So you have to rebuild. Every time you change a parameter, you have to destroy it and rebuild it for it to apply. So now the weapons are much, much faster. If you want, you can increase your multiple. I think it's up to 999. Let's put that. Oh, let's not forget you need more power if you're gonna shoot faster, right? So this. There you go. So just so you can see that again, very, very fast and powerful. These make for impossible ships to fight against, obviously. That's really it for all the emitters. Eventually we'll look into PL cores to see how you can program them. But that's enough for now. So we can exit that way. I don't need to save it. And that was the map we were just on, so I will delete that because I don't need it. And we can go back to the teaching map. So I didn't show you how I drew this land. There's a separate video without really any voiceovers that just shows you how I build these reasonably looking land masses. Not the best, but it's good enough for my maps. I'm not an artist. So right now we have 2 ships, 3 ships, and we have the emitters in the directions we want them. Now these are all the basic emitters. There's no real change to the parameters, and that's what we're going to do next. So you'll notice here I put some fields saying that any particles that fall this way are forced to go towards the only energy source, and that's how I want it. So general settings, I'm going to allow struct creation for the players, and I'm going to remove rock burners to make a little bit things more complicated. So now we have 1 energy source and a couple of these. Now 1 energy source is not going to be enough to win this game. So what I'm going to do next is change 1 of these, so when it is destroyed it creates another energy source. But it's going to be a very small energy source like this. And same thing over here. That's going to be a small energy source. And of course, I want to actually add more energy. The energy is going to be right here. And that's a good size. Then to get to this one, let's add another one for good measure. Like that. At the back. Let's make that 30. So this is a 30 range energy source. Now what you can do to be a bit more mischievous is increase the number of energy sources on top of each other. So if you clone the energy source like this, I'm going to delete it real quick. Clone the energy source and press 0. So now it has no power in the range of 1. I can make a couple of those and stack them on top of each other, just like that. So now what that looks like is a single energy source, but it's going to grow a bunch of different mines. So when your ships come, they're going to be under fire pretty heavily. Now there's only 1 amp gem, and usually that's not enough for us, a map. We want to be able to give enough amp gems for the players to actually make their own strategies. So what I'm going to do is give it, in a vulnerable spot, an amp gem factory that gives you enough amp gems to have some variability, but not to fill out everything. And we have, of course, the waste stunner, which starts really early in. I'm going to put that core there. That's for later. I'll explain what we're going to do with that core in a later video. Now 7 energy is not a lot. We're going to need a lot more energy than that for start off, so I'm going to increase that to 15. And we're going to give them energy pods. So energy pods are just one time, I believe 250 sets of energy or points of energy. So if that's an extra 1,000, I'm going to scatter a couple on the land here and there, just to give the players a little boost as they go through the map. This one, when this one gets destroyed, we'll give an M gem. And these two, this two will give a small amount of energy, and this one 20. So now we know there's enough energy on the map for it to be sustainable, and we'll go from there. So let's save. I always finalize, as you know, and let's see what this looks like when we start it up. So the emitters seem to be attracted to something, either to other emitters, yeah, so they're pulling around the emitters, and we don't want that. They're not aggressive, they're not going towards the energy source. So I'm going to change the settings for these four. These ones, I'm perfectly okay with them trying to protect themselves. So we're going to switch that. We're going to load the map, and we're going to switch this. Wrong one, editor. We're going to switch this to 50% emitters. These ones, 0% emitter, 0% emitter, and 0% here. Now, I usually don't use variable except 0 or 100%, and that's mostly because if you have a probability, then it takes a lot more memory and can lag down the game. I'm using it on this one, but that's fine because we don't have a lot of particles in this case. So let's watch it again. Now they're coming directly for these emitters, and they're pulling around this one. So maybe in hindsight, I'll change these to just free floating particles so that I don't aim to anything. And this one will be a 50-50. Yeah, that's what I'll have to do. There we go. So these ones will no longer aim at anything, just float freely and attack any ships in the vicinity, like that. And this one will flip between emitters and energy sources. So let's do that and see how it looks. Of course, we're gonna play around with how long they survive and things like that. So there you go, that fills out the land pretty well. Then we get these particles trying to flow through. And you'll see that I only have 1,200 particles, which is not a lot, but it's enough to give it a good set of game. And it's starting to attack this energy source, which is good. We want it to go in this direction over a short period of time. So we like what we're seeing, so we're going to move on and now start modifying the actual emitter strengths. For example, we know this one pulls around here quite a lot because there's 6 things, so I don't need them to survive very long. So maybe I can break the life down to, let's say, 900 frames, so about 30 seconds. We can reduce this significantly to maybe 100, so we have less particles, and we make them hard. We want them to actually give a punch when they hit our ships. And we can increase their speed a little bit. There goes the dog, of course. Nothing I can do about him. And there we go. Let's try that. How does this look? So now these hard particles, notice that they're different colors, darker red. That's because I have my settings to show the health of the particles rather than the actual speeds. There you go. Now they're kind of going here, pooling around, but they don't have time to pool, so they refire, and then they go towards whatever they can find. That looks good. Now, I have to do this for all the emitters. I'm not going to show you how to do that for what I'm going to set all these at individually, because that's going to be pretty boring. And I usually have edge destroy. In this case, I don't think I will. And we can also have flip, which basically just puts a little purple dot. And if you can be rapid enough before it starts firing, for example, like this, put some protection. Like that. I'm cheating a bit, but if you can actually convert it fast enough, it will turn into a friendly emitter and do blue particles. Now we're not going to do that for this map. We don't have enough enemies to worry about having friendly particulates. So for now I'm going to stop, and we'll come back once I have all my emitters set up the way I want to have set.